Hey guys, tonight we're going to leave behind our cozy beds, our filtered water, and our fridge full of leftovers we're not excited about but still want throw out. And instead, we're heading somewhere far less forgiving. Picture the worst thing you've ever eaten. Maybe it was airport chicken the colour of printer toner, or that gas station tuna sandwich that felt like a dare. You ate it anyway, and regretted it for days. Now imagine eating something worse than that every single day. For the rest of your life, that's where we're going. And let's be honest, faced with that menu, you probably wouldn't make it past breakfast. The texture alone would break you. The flavour, if you could call it that, would haunt you. And the water. The water would kill you before the food had the chance. So before we get started, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. And in the comments below, tell me where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are. I always love seeing how this strange little time machine stretches across the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, or imagine the crackle of a fire somewhere far away, small, smoky, and the only thing keeping you alive. Because tonight, you wake up in the 14th century, and the first thing you feel is hunger. Not the modern kind, not I skipped lunch, the kind that makes your bones ache, the kind that waits for you in the pot still warm, still grey, and still ready to disappoint you. You open your eyes, the mattress is gone, the window, gone, you're lying on straw, and everything smells like smoke. You can't quite breathe. Not fully, not the way your lungs were designed to. The air inside this house isn't air so much as it is history burnt and floating. You take a shallow breath and feel the weight of it behind your eyes. It stings a little. It always stings. This is a crock house. Though no one here calls it that. No one calls it anything. It simply is. 4 leaning wooden ribs, plastered over with a clumsy mix of straw, mud, and manure. The mixture has hardened into something vaguely structural, though in the wind it moans like old wood giving up. The thatched roof droops with damp and time. It's not insulation, it's habitat. Rats rustle just above your head. Insects tiny. Glistening things nest deep in the straw, occasionally dropping into your food, your clothes, your hair. You've long stopped reacting. There are no windows, just holes, covered with wooden shutters warped from rain. They're opened in desperation and closed in fear. Cold air slices through the gaps. The smoke never escapes, but the warmth always does. You stand still in the middle of the room, and already your skin feels sticky. The floor beneath you is packed earth, worn hard by decades of footsteps and spilled broth. When it rains, it sweats. When it's dry, it cracks like tired knuckles. There's only one room. No corners to retreat to, no privacy to invent. Your entire family sleeps here, eats here, dresses and defecates in proximity. Even the chickens. They wander freely through the legs of chairs, nesting near the hearth, occasionally taking flight in a flurry of feathers and shit. Everything in this space serves 2 or 3 functions, and none of them comfortably. A bench is a bed, a pile of straw is a mattress, a wooden spoon is a mirror if you squint hard enough. You lost the right to sentiment about objects long ago. What doesn't burn, breaks. What doesn't break, moulds. In the centre of it all, anchoring this suffocating little world, is the hearth, or more accurately, the smoke pit. There is no chimney, just a hole above, too small, too clogged with soot to be useful. Smoke gathers in the rafters and curls down like a living thing. It bites, it chokes, it clings. The fire is always burning, low and steady. You don't have enough wood to let it roar, but you can't afford to let it die either. Without that flame, your pot would cool, and your home would invite in things you can't fight: mould, rot, chill, death. The smoke is your enemy and your saviour. It suffocates the mosquitoes. It stuns the fleas. It kills the scent of humans from predators and worse lords. You've lived in this fog since birth. Your eyes adjusted long ago. Your lungs less so. You wheeze sometimes at night. The children cough like they're hiding secrets. But silence is more dangerous than sickness. So you let it go. You sit on the edge of the sleeping bench, watching the air wobble over the flame. It smells like boiled cabbage, burnt oats, and wet wool. Your clothes never dry fully. They ferment on your back. Your skin is a patchwork of rashes and calluses and smoke stains. The inside of your nose is black. You've never seen it clean. Outside, the wind claws at the walls. It whistles through every seam in the construction. There's no glass, no sealant, no barrier between your world and the one that wants to freeze it. You've patched the gaps with old cloth, dried leaves, the bones of mice, but still, it gets in. The wind always gets in, so you stay close to the fire, even as it poisons you. You try not to think about the wind outside. You try not to think about how cold the floor is when you step down at night to relieve yourself in the bucket. You try not to think about how your father used to sit in this same spot, stare at the same smoke, and say nothing for hours. You try not to think about how you're becoming him. This room is not a home, it's a lung. It breathes in ash and exhales fatigue. There's no up or down here, no past or future. There is only the smoke, and the body that continues to move through it. You glance at the ceiling. More smoke, more straw, more years collected like cobwebs. The baby stirs in the corner, the chickens peck at the floor, a giraffe slips under the door and kisses your ankles. It feels personal. No one speaks. The sound of the fire is enough. A bubbling sigh from the pot, the occasional snap of a damp log refusing to burn with dignity. Everything else, the coughing, the scratching, the snoring is constant background. You've tuned it out, not because you want to, but because you must. The world has narrowed itself into this space, a single room, a single pot, a single kind of hunger, and everything smells like smoke. The pot is always there. You don't remember a time before it. You can't imagine a day without it. It hangs over the fire like a blackened moon, silent and heavy, crusted with soot and memory. It is not clean. It is never clean. It is not meant to be. Scrubbing it would feel sacrilegious. It would be like trying to wash the night sky. The pot is ionancient, worn smooth on the inside from decades of boiling and scraping. The outside is a cathedral of burn marks, layers of soot curling like smoke frozen in time. You don't know who forged it. You only know you were born into its orbit. The first smell you remember is from that pot. The first burn on your tongue. The first time you were told no more. That's all we have. It came from here. Everything important does. Each morning begins with it. Someone wakes early, your mother, your sister. Maybe you, and pokes the coals until the embers blush again. A small splash of water is added. The pot wakes slowly. Its contents begin to stir. There is always something inside. Always. Even if it's just the last slick at the bottom. The greasy memory of last night's dinner. That sludge will become the base for today's meal and tomorrow's. And the next. This is a perpetual pot, a living stew, a god that eats itself so that you may survive. You do not empty it. You do not start fresh. You add. You stir. You pray. Grains, if you have them. A handful of oats. Crushed barley. Whatever didn't sprout or mould in the corner sack. Water stream water, metallic and clouded. Maybe a few leaves you found behind the hut. A carrot with 3 legs. A cabbage core too bitter for the chickens. The pot doesn't judge. It takes everything in. You stir with the same spoon your father used, the handle worn to the shape of a thumbprint that doesn't quite match your own. The motion is automatic, clockwise, always clockwise, as if going the other way would undo something vital. Sometimes the pot hisses, sometimes it gurgles, sometimes it falls quiet, as if listening. You find yourself watching it as though waiting for a sign. The pottage thickens slowly, takes on the colour of surrender, greyish, beige, brown. If you're lucky, it smells like yesterday, and the day before that, and the week before that, because it is. There are rumours, old stories, of pots that have gone on for years, 10, 20, 50, families who never cleaned the bottom because it held the flavour of the ancestors. You don't know if that's true, but your pot has known the same soup since before your youngest brother was born. You sit in front of it and feel your belly clench. Not with hunger, though there's always there, but with something more ritualistic, something near fear, as if the pot might notice you thinking poorly of it. You've never named it, but it feels like it has a name. Something ancient and round. Something that would burn your tongue if you tried to say it aloud. This pot is not a tool. It is not a kitchen object. It is a deity. It demands offerings daily, without fail. It consumes scraps, roots, prayers. It asks for more even when you have nothing left to give. And in return, it gives you back a kind of survival. Not life, not joy, but the energy to last until the next offering, and that is enough. You eat from it with reverence, even when what it gives is barely food, a warm, wet, salty ghost of nourishment. You don't chew it. You let it slide across your tongue and down your throat. You don't taste it anymore. You don't need to. The taste is in your bones now, in your nails, in the smell of your hair. When you sweat, you smell like boiled grain and old cabbage. When you cough, it's a puff of steam. The pot is part of you. At night, after the bowls are scraped clean with crusts of bread or fingers or desperation, you cover it with a cloth to keep the ashes out. You bank the fire. You whisper the same words every night, though you don't realize you're doing it. Please last. Please hold. Please feed us again. No one taught you to say that. You've just always said it. Sometimes you dream that the pot is empty, that you look inside and there's nothing. Not even the crusty smear of barley. Just a black echo where hope should be. You wake up sweating, sick. You check the pot in the dark. It is never empty. But the offerings grow smaller, thinner, stretching what should last a day into a week. You've learned how to trick the eye more water, longer boils, herbs with no calories but strong smells. You've mastered the art of pretending something is food. The pot forgives you, but it remembers. The children ask what's in the stew and you lie. You tell them stories, a boar, a duck, a dragon's tail. You watch their eyes light up for a second before their tongues tell the truth. It's barley and bitterness and the dregs of last month's generosity, and still you feed the pot. Because if the pot dies, the rhythm breaks. If the rhythm breaks, time unravels. You won't know what day it is, what season, what year. The pot is your calendar, your clock, your tether to the idea that tomorrow will come, and it will be fed. And maybe, just maybe, one day something good will go into it. Something rich, something fatty, something you can actually chew. A real carrot, a shred of pork, a miracle. But until then, you scrape the barrel, you boil the weeds, you thank the pot for keeping you in motion, and you feed it, because it has never stopped feeding you. There's something about the first bite that feels like defeat. You already know what it will taste like. You always know. There is no surprise, no delight, no discovery. There is only the slow return of something you've chewed 1,000 times before. A familiar sadness, served warm. The pottage is ready, if you can call it that. It doesn't announce itself with steam or fragrance. There's no aroma curling up from the pot to tempt you. No anticipation, just heat. Damp, dense heat. The ladle scrapes through it with resistance. Not smooth, there's a thickness that clings and then suddenly lets go, like mud, or something worse. You dip your bowl low, trying not to look too closely. Looking invites thought, and thought makes it harder to eat. You bring the spoon to your lips, not quickly. There's no eagerness, just the dull knowledge that you must. It touches your tongue, and again, for the 1,000th time, you taste grain, but not the kind with flavour or character, not toasted, not milled into anything soft or gentle. This is raw, crushed oat, not quite flour, not quite gravel. A sharpness remains, as if the stone wheel that ground it left behind part of itself. There's water, of course. Water pulled from the stream near the edge of the village, the same stream where the animals drink and relieve themselves, where children splash and piss, where the tanner dumps his lye. It has a flavour, metallic, vaguely green, like rusted iron soaked in moss. It lingers in the back of your throat. Not unpleasant exactly, but deeply unnatural. The vegetables offer no comfort. If you were lucky, someone found a few leeks with greens still clinging to the stalk. A cabbage leaf too tough to chew but good enough for the boil. A turnip so small and gnarled it could pass for a rock. Nothing sweet, nothing fresh. Everything is tired, rubbery, greyish, boiled until the last shape collapses. Sometimes you get a pea. Once, long ago, peas were round and bright. These are wrinkled, yellow, hollow. You bite one and it turns to paste between your teeth, dry, even in soup. And yet this is what feeds you. Not because it nourishes, not really, but because it fills space. You chew slowly, because chewing breaks the texture, And the texture is the worst part. Some days the pottage is loose, watery. Your spoon skims the surface and comes up barely coated. You drink it like broth, though broth implies flavour. This has none. It's like the ghost of food passed through hot water and left behind its shadow. Other days, it's thick, clotted. It holds its shape. You can stand your spoon in it and it doesn't fall. This is when the pot has absorbed too much root and not enough water. The result is a paste-like glue mixed with sand. It sticks to your molars, your gums. You feel it long after swallowing. Occasionally, both happen at once. The top thin, the bottom sludge, a confusion of consistencies. You stir, and it resists. You scoop, and it separates. You don't complain. There's no one to complain to. Everyone eats the same. The children don't ask what's in it anymore. They know there's no answer. Or rather, there's only one. What we had, that could mean anything. That could mean nothing. The pottage has no beginning, no end. It is the continuity of hunger. It's not dinner, it's a sentence. A daily punishment made edible. You feel the grit on your tongue. Tiny bits of husk and shell. Dirt that wasn't fully rinsed off. Dust from the mill floor. You once pulled a feather from your mouth and said nothing. These things happen. Your teeth ache, not from cold or heat, but from erosion. The constant grind of rough grain and chalky residue has worn them smooth. Eating is friction now. Some mornings, the pot smells a little sour. Not spoiled, just fermented. A sign it's been simmering too long, or not enough. The sourness doesn't stop you. It wakes you, like vinegar under your tongue. The colour varies, slightly, beige, mostly, with streaks of grey or green depending on the vegetables. Once it was almost red, someone added a beet. It felt violent. No one liked it. You can't remember the last time it tasted good. That doesn't mean it's bad. Good and bad don't apply anymore. There is only will it fill me and will it make me sick. Everything else is noise. You eat slowly, out of habit, out of reverence, out of self-preservation. Because you've come to believe perhaps correctly that if you rush, if you act like this is food, the pot will know, and it will punish you. Sometimes, late at night, you think about what's really inside. Not just grain and roots, but layers, like geological sediment. This morning's oats, last night's cabbage, last week's carrot ends, a trace of parsley from 2 Sundays ago, the rind of cheese your uncle brought before he died, a spoonful of lentils you thought you'd forgotten, and underneath it all the real base, the unspoken foundation, the ghosts of meals you can't remember. The echoes of hunger pass through hands now buried in the churchyard. Your grandmother stirred this pot. So did hers. Their shadows cling to the bottom, their recipes, their salt. You are not eating soup. You are eating history, compressed, congealed, rewarmed endlessly until time itself dissolves. Each bite contains a day that once was, a moment someone once hoped would be better than this one. But it wasn't. You scrape the side of your bowl with your thumb, gathering the last smear of grain. You lick it clean. You do not waste. Even ghosts deserve to be swallowed whole. There's a smear on your chin you don't notice, a fleck of turnip in your teeth. You've stopped caring how you look while eating. Everyone looks the same. Heads down, hands cupped, lips dry, eyes far away. The pot simmers behind you, not with joy, not with violence, just with duty. It waits for more. It always waits for more. And you will give it something. Even if it's only time, even if it's only yourself. You reach for the bread. You don't want to. You never really do. But you have to. Because the pottage, for all its sludge and sour, isn't enough. It slides through your belly like a whispered apology. It doesn't stay. It doesn't sit. That's where the bread comes in. Not to nourish. Not even to satisfy. But to anchor. To weigh you down. To fool the body into believing it's been fed. You tear off a piece. More accurately, you saw it off, because this is not bread as you know it, not the kind that yields, not the soft, spongy pillows you see in market stalls or the flaky crescents in the hands of the travelling priest. This bread is something else. It's called maslin, a mixture of rye and wheat, though calling it a mixture suggests intention. In truth, it's whatever didn't fail in the field. The leftover grain, the reluctant survivors of last season, ground together into something more insult than food. You feel it under your fingertips, heavy, dense, reluctant to be handled. The crust isn't crisp, it's armoured. You press a thumb into it and nothing gives. The bread pushes back, it's grey-brown, the colour of regret and poor soil. Inside, the crumb is close, compacted like stone dust. There are flecks of bran, bits of husk, even the occasional pebble. You've bitten into pebbles before. That's why you use your knife. Not a kitchen knife, mind you. Just the knife. The one you use for everything: gutting fish, cutting twine, scraping mud from your boots, cleaning your fingernails. It lives in your belt and in your hand. It is part of you. With practiced care, you shave a wedge from the loaf. It splinters slightly at the edge. Crumbs scatter like shrapnel. You inspect the slice knot out of curiosity, but caution. This bread can hurt you. You dip it into the pottage. That's the trick. You never eat it dry. That would be suicide. The bread must soak, must soften. You press it deep into the soup. Let the liquid creep up its sides like blood in a bandage. It takes time. Muslin doesn't absorb, it resists. It has the density of history and the arrogance of necessity, but eventually it yields. A little. You lift it to your mouth, carefully, slowly. You've learned not to rush. Your first bite feels like swallowing a corner of the table, gritty, sour, a paste that immediately glues itself to your teeth. You chew slowly, evenly, trying not to break a molar. This is not food. This is negotiation. Every mouthful is a contract between your hunger and your patience. The bread will fill you, but at a price. You feel the scratch of it in your throat. It doesn't go down clean. It drags something with it: pride. Maybe. Or just the top layer of your esophagus. You chew again. There's always something to chew. The fibres never quite break down. The grain was milled too coarsely on dull stones by a man who probably stole a handful for himself. Who could blame him? And yet you're grateful. This bread, this terrible, belligerent bread, it keeps you upright. It's strange, isn't it? How something so hostile can be so necessary. How something that tastes like damp cellar and broken promises becomes the most important thing on your plate. You eat in silence. So does everyone else. This is not a communal meal. It is a private reckoning shared in company. You watch your child gnaw at his slice, eyes narrowed. He has not yet learned to dip it properly. He winces. You do not help. Pain is the teacher here. You glance at the remaining loaf on the table. It will last days, weeks, if you're careful. It's already a week old. Hard enough to drive nails. A thief once broke a tooth trying to steal it. You laughed. Quietly. Some say Muslin keeps you full longer. That's not true. It keeps you busy longer. You spend more time chewing, swallowing, digesting, suffering. It's a meal and a labour, and it has history. You've seen the other bread, the white bread. On feast days, when the Lord's table is visible from the courtyard, tall servants bring out loaves that shimmer in the light. So pale they look baked from clouds. So soft you imagine pressing your cheek into them. That's called manchet, made from the finest sifted wheat, reserved for nobility, clergy, or the very lucky. It barely needs to be chewed. It dissolves like a promise kept. Your bread does not dissolve. Your bread is an obligation, a symbol, a weapon, a wall. You've used it to wedge open doors, to prop up uneven chairs, to throw at rats in the grain bin. Once, in a fight, your neighbour hurled a stale heel like a stone and broke a man's nose. You've sharpened knives on your crust. You've softened it in broth, milk, spit. You've swallowed it dry when desperate. You've cursed it, praised it, dreamed about better, but always you've eaten it. Because as cruel as this bread is, the alternative is worse. No bread. You've known that silence. The way the room feels when there's no loaf on the table. The way children look at you without asking. The way your hands shake while you pretend not to notice. That is the true punishment. So you eat. Bite by bite. Chew by chew. You feel the dull ache in your jaw, the sting in your gums, the scrape at the roof of your mouth, and you thank the bread. Not out loud, but inwardly, bitterly, sincerely, because it is still here, because you are still here. And that is the only miracle left. Your teeth will not last. They were never meant to, not in this world, not with this bread, not with this flour. Every bite you take is a gamble, not just with hunger, but with erosion, with slow destruction, with the quiet war between your mouth and the food that pretends to feed it. Because this flour, the base of your bread, your pottage thickener, your false sense of safety, is not just ground grain. Not anymore. The miller takes his share. Everyone knows that. A little from every sack. No one dares to stop him. He's got the only stone wheels in the village. He keeps them turning like a priest keeps a prayer. But when grain is scarce, when the fields have yielded too little, when the taxman has taken too much, when the stores are nearly bare, he adds things. To stretch, to bulk, to deceive. You've seen the sacks come back heavier than they should be. You know the feel of false flour. It's in the texture, not silky, gritty. Sometimes it's sand-fine, pale, almost elegant, until it grinds beneath your molars like powdered glass. Sometimes it's chalk dust, scraped from old walls or river rocks. It lightens the colour, makes the bread look cleaner, richer, but it settles in your gut like shame. Sometimes it's woods dust from the floor of the mill, swept up after sharpening ploughs. You've chewed it before. It tastes like nothing and still manages to feel like punishment. Other times, it's powdered bean husk, crushed acorns, even crushed bones if the rumours are true. Anything dry. Anything that looks like food from a distance but feels like betrayal in the mouth. You've heard the whispers about bakers who sift ash into their dough, about mothers who boil leather for soup and then grind the scraps into flour for cakes. But those are stories. What's in your mouth now is real. You chew and feel the scrape, not a sharp pain, just a dull, steady sanding, like your mouth is being filed down from the inside out. At first, it's manageable, a small crack in a tooth, a sore spot, a little blood when you spit. Then it gets worse. You start to feel heat in your jaw, deep and throbbing, a pressure that builds behind your eye. Your gums swell. The side of your face aches. You run your tongue over a molar and it shifts, just slightly, like it's thinking of leaving. But there is no leaving here. Soon, chewing becomes dangerous. You switch sides. You chew slower. You soak the bread longer. You grind everything with the flat of your tongue against the roof of your mouth, and still it comes. Infection. There is no dentistry here. No rinses. No numbing gel. No gentle hands and clean instruments. There is only the knife and hope. If the swelling doesn't go down, someone will offer to lance it. If you're lucky, it will drain. If not, it won't, and the fever begins. It climbs behind your ears, into your spine. Your jaw locks. Swallowing hurts. Your neck stiffens. The pain blooms like rot, and then you die. Not from a wound, not from hunger, from a tooth, from a pebble in the bread, from a lie in the flour. This is not rare. It happens quietly, often in the cold months, when damp bread grows harder and tempers are short, when even a single missed meal weakens the body enough to make a mouth wound lethal. No one marks these deaths. No one carves toothache into a gravestone. But you know, you've seen your uncle scream without sound, his cheeks puffed and blotched with poison. You've seen the village widow pass out at the table, blood dripping from her lip. You've seen a child stop eating altogether, silent, eyes wide, mouth clamped shut until the end. And you know your turn is coming. You feel it every day in the soft give of a gum, the tiny flicker of pain when cold broth hits an exposed nerve, the way you wince before every bite, not from hunger, but from anticipation. The flour has killed you slowly, patiently, and no one will be blamed, because this is how it works. This is the system, the economy of deception. The Lord demands his grain. The miller shaves his cut. The baker stretches what's left. The bread looks the same, feels the same, and tastes just good enough to hide the difference. By the time you realize you're chewing wood pulp and powdered stone, it's too late. The damage is inside you. And still, you eat. Because what else is there? You dream. Sometimes of soft things, of cakes, of loaves that tear easily, steam rising from golden crusts, of things you don't need a knife for, of things that don't draw blood. But dreams don't last long in the morning. You wake up, you take the bread. You feel it in your palm hard, heavy, already dry. You cut it, you soak it, you chew, and with each bite your teeth wear down until the day one doesn't come back up, and you spit blood into your bowl, and the bowl doesn't care, and neither does the bread, because it was never made for you. It was made to keep you quiet, to keep you working, to keep you dying slowly. Your bread is brown, not the rich, nutty kind, not artisan, not crusty in that rustic, Instagram-worthy way. It's brown because it has to be, because it's made of whatever was left after everyone else had their share. It's brown because it contains more than flour, bark, dust, grit, regret, and you eat it anyway. Because what choice do you have? You chew slowly, not out of manners, but necessity. Your bread is a fight. Every bite wears your teeth down like sandpaper. You've chipped a molar before. You might again. This bread isn't nourishment. It's a reminder that you are not the one who eats white, because just a mile away, on the other side of the hedge-lined road, your Lord is breaking bread too. Only his is white, soft, fresh, baked with the finest wheat flour, sifted and sifted again until not a speck of husk remains. It gleams like something divine when the servant sets it down beside the roast fowl and poached pears. It doesn't just taste better, it is better. Because wheat is expensive, because white bread is labour, because refinement takes resources, because whiteness is luxury, and that luxury was never meant for you. You don't even know what that bread would taste like. You've never held it. You've seen it once tossed out by a visiting merchant who found it stale after a single day. Your cousin snatched it from the ditch and cried as she ate. You remember watching her and thinking, even her tears are cleaner than my supper. Your bread is made of maslin, an angry mixture of barley and rye, coarse, dark, bitter. When it's fresh, it's already stale. When it's old, it bites back. You have to soak it in soup just to soften it enough to tear. Even then, it's a weapon. A loaf could bruise a child, a crust could cut your lip, but you keep eating because it's all you have, and because somewhere along the line, someone convinced you that you deserve it. That bread like yours is just the way things are. You're a peasant, a worker, a body, not a mouth. And your bread reflects that. It's not just food, it's your status, your sentence, your ceiling. You try not to think about it, but every time you see a noblewoman smile with pastry flaking on her fingers, every time you pass the manor kitchens and smell sugar and spice, every time you notice the baker walking 2 baskets down different streets, white bread for the high hill, brown brick for the low cottages, you remember. This isn't about grain, it's about power. It's always been about power. White bread is served at feasts. Your bread is rationed in silence. White bread is cut with silver knives. Yours is hacked with the same blade that trims rope and scrapes manure. White bread is symbolic of Christ, of wealth, of purity. Yours is just survival. You once overheard the priest say that white bread represents the body of God. You wondered what that made yours. Then you swallowed hard and kept chewing, because you were hungry. Because faith doesn't fill a stomach, but bread does, even if it hurts, even if it's blackened at the edges and crumbles like gravel, even if it tastes like someone else's life. You teach your children not to complain. You tell them, this is what strong people eat. You tell them, it's hearty. You tell them, it's better than nothing. But you see the way they look at the manor cart as it rattles by. You see how their eyes follow the clean linen wrapping golden loaves like treasure. You see the hunger they don't speak, the resentment they don't know how to name. Yet, and maybe one day, one of them will bite into a white loaf, not because it was given, but because it was taken. Maybe then the colour of bread won't matter so much. Maybe then the hunger will have changed into something sharper. For now, though, you chew your bitterness. You soak your slice in thin soup. Wait for it to soften and hold it in your palm like it might disappear. And as you take another bite, you remind yourself that this is still better than nothing. But not by much. The sack isn't empty. Not quite. But when you press your hands against the sides, it folds like old cloth. The grain that once rose like a firm promise now gathers in corners, loose and quiet like coins in the pocket of a man who used to be rich. You untie the mouth of the sack and reach in. The barley feels lighter than it should. Not because there's less of it, though there is, but because each handful carries the weight of calculation, of subtraction. You measure with your fingers, Not a cup, not even a half, just a guess. Just enough to thicken the pot. Not enough to stop it from whispering hunger when you eat. The dried peas are gone. The last few rolled across the dirt last week, spilled from a cracked bowl and swept into the fire without ceremony. No one cried, no one spoke, but you all watched the flames. The salted fish barrel stands open now. The brine is cloudy. The wood is warped. At the bottom, 2 fillets lie twisted together like paper left out in the rain. You should eat them. You don't, because once they're gone, the barrel will be truly empty, and no one wants to be the one to see that. You check the last of the dried leeks. They've gone soft with time. They smell like damp rope. You wrap them in cloth anyway. Maybe they'll be useful, maybe not. Even the bad food gets to be hopeful before it's discarded. The flour is a memory. You keep the empty sack because the fabric might be mended into something useful. A cover for the pot, a rag for a wound. It still smells faintly of bread, and that alone makes it precious. This is the hungry gap. You don't call it that. Not out loud. That would make it real. That would give it power. But the village knows. Everyone knows. The stores from autumn are gone. The new crops aren't ready. The ground is green. Yes, but uselessly so. Young wheat waves in the fields like a cruel joke. Sprouts push through the soil with confidence. But you can't eat confidence. Not yet. Everything outside is growing. Everything inside is shrinking. You open the cupboard and find a single turnip. It's soft. Sprouting at the top. Wrinkled like skin left too long in cold water. You leave it there. Just in case. You keep thinking the church might help. They did last year. A sack of rye. A wedge of cheese. Enough to feel human for a week. But this year, they've gone quiet. The priest hasn't left the manor, and the granary doors stay shut. So you do what everyone does during the gap. You ration. At first, you cut the bread thinner. Then you soak it longer, trying to draw more sustenance from the soup. Then you skip your own portion entirely and pretend you ate before. You lie to your children. I'm not hungry. I ate while you were out. The pot tasted better yesterday. But your body knows. It knows in the way you stand up too fast and the room tilts, in the way your hands tremble when tying knots, in the way your breath shortens when lifting anything heavier than a thought. Your body is shrinking itself to match your rations, and the days go on. Each morning, you open the cupboard hoping for a miracle. Each evening, you close it a little more carefully, afraid the sound might reveal the truth. You begin to count things that don't want to be counted. Nails, crumbs, chipped pieces of dried carrot. You press them flat between stones and call it seasoning. You scrape the pot a little harder. You boil the water a little longer. You crush every seed you find and wonder if it's poisonous or just unpleasant. But nothing changes. The gap doesn't end just because you need it to. It ends when the earth says so, and the earth is not in a hurry. You stare out at the fields. They're beautiful. That's the worst part. Everything is blooming. Buds on the trees, birds returning to the hedgerows, bees buzzing lazily through blossoms that would make a child smile if there was energy to smile left. Spring mocks you with abundance. The nettles are green, but too small. The berries haven't yet formed. The roots are too deep to pull, too thin to matter. The rabbits are bold, but still protected by law. So you stay inside. You listen to your belly complain like an old friend. You bite your tongue when your child asks, "When will we have more?" You don't answer. There's no answer. The old women in the village say this is when the ghosts get loud, that hunger thins the veil between the living and the dead, that those who starved before will come to sit beside you, silently watching. You don't believe that, but you do sometimes feel watched, especially when you try to stretch the soup with hot water, and it becomes a broth so clear it reflects your face, especially when you serve that to your children, especially when they thank you. You know it will get worse before it gets better. The grain has not yet turned. The gardens are not yet fruiting. The chickens are not yet laying. The goat's milk has dried with her ribs. So you begin to count days instead of meals. You make a game of it. 3 more days and the nettles might be edible. 5 more and the dandelions will open. A week, maybe 2, and you might find something under the hedges. Roots, shoots, something. But time doesn't move faster just because you want it to, and hunger is not patient. It waits in the corner of the room, breathing softly, watching your cupboard, watching your children. It is not cruel, but it is relentless, and it always outlasts the bread. It doesn't smell like anything anymore. You stand over the pot, watching the surface shift. There's no bubble, no simmer, just a lazy wobble of heat, like breath on glass. The colour is the same as yesterday, and the day before, thin brown, a memory of a meal, a suggestion. You stir, not because it needs it, but because the motion comforts you. Clockwise, slow, without hope. The wooden spoon creaks across the bottom. You scrape at nothing. There is nothing to stir. The pot contains water, mostly a few stray oats, a pale shard of something that might have once been parsnip, the skin of a turnip that never softened, a swirl of oil that isn't oil, but the ghost of beans boiled a week ago. It has no scent, no shape. If you close your eyes, you could convince yourself it's warm rain. You taste it, cautiously. The spoon trembles in your hand, though you don't know why. There is no reason to be afraid of something so harmless as this. You are, because it tastes like nothing. Not bad, not sour, just absent. It disappears on your tongue before your brain can register it. It's like swallowing fog. It leaves behind no comfort, no warmth, only the faintest trace of wet. You've boiled away the meal, you've turned the ingredients into ghosts, and now you're feeding them to your family. Your daughter sits near the hearth, her legs folded beneath her, too thin now to pad the floor. Her eyes are wide and still. She doesn't ask what's for dinner. She doesn't ask anything anymore. Your husband slumps beside her. His shoulders have narrowed. His beard is streaked with ash. He doesn't speak, just nods. His hands are calloused from work that no longer feeds him. The old woman, the one you used to call your mother, before she began to forget everything, lays on the mat. She breathes in small, uneven pulls. You count the seconds between them. You've stopped calling it sleep. You serve the soup, if you can still call it that. You ladle the liquid carefully, not to preserve it. There's little left to preserve but to create the illusion of something substantial. You pour slowly, from height, so it splashes and makes sound. Sound implies weight. You hand out the bowls, one to each. The children cup theirs in both hands, as if it might float away. The steam brushes their cheeks. A kindness, a lie. You watch them lift spoons to lips. No one speaks, no one chews. There is nothing to chew. This is not a meal, this is ritual. You gather around the pot, not to eat, but to pretend, to perform, to remember what it used to feel like when food filled the mouth and warmed the chest. You swallow the broth and feel no change. Your stomach remains hollow. The hunger isn't dulled. If anything, it becomes sharper, more focused, as if insulted by the gesture. You've boiled the taste out of the soup and out of your life. You've turned sustenance into vapour. The baby cries once, softly, then stops. He doesn't have the energy for a full wail. He's learned it gets him nothing. You watch the flames under the pot flicker, weak, almost embarrassed. They know their job is done. You sit down. You stare into your bowl. It reflects you. That's the worst part. This thin brown water, this flavourless heat, it holds your image. Blurred, warped, but real. You see your face, hollowed, pale, your mouth slack with fatigue. You look older than your years, and then, for a second, you see someone else, not your reflection. Someone deeper, a woman with your face, but not your eyes. A shadow in the surface of the soup, watching, waiting. You blink. It's gone. You dip your spoon again, hand trembling. This is not food. It is presence. It is everything that isn't there. It is the taste of what could have been. You're no longer cooking ingredients. You're cooking absence. You've boiled the last of the dried herbs. You've crushed the crumbs of old bread into paste. You've emptied every jar, every sack, every forgotten pouch of seeds. All of it has passed through this pot. And now there's nothing left to boil except time. So you serve it, ladle by ladle. You are feeding them time, and it's not enough. You hear your daughter's spoon tap the bottom of her bowl, a small clean sound. Too clean, too final. She doesn't ask for more. She knows better. You clear the bowls without words. No one thanks you. There's no need. You didn't give them dinner. You gave them the illusion of not starving. And for one more day, it will have to be enough. You wash the bowls with the last of the water from the bucket. It's not clean, but it clears the worst of the residue. The colour is left behind. The smell lingers faintly like sadness and steam. You return the pot to its place over the fire. It is not empty. It never is. There is always something in it, even if it's only silence. You cover it with a cloth and sit beside it. You close your eyes, and you listen. Not for sounds, but for absence. You hear your own breath, the fire cracking once, then nothing. Your husband's shallow exhale, the baby's hiccup, the whisper of wind through the door. But louder than all of that, the soup, still warm, still waiting, still whispering. You wake up earlier now, not because you're rested. No one sleeps deeply in hunger, but because the pot is nearly empty. And when the pot is empty, the world shrinks to a single question. What can I find? You step outside into the grey of the early morning. The village is still. Chimneys puff quietly. Somewhere, a rooster crows without enthusiasm. You cross the yard barefoot, not out of habit, but because your shoes have holes and you've grown used to the feel of cold mud between your toes. Your hands carry a woven sack, soft with wear, patched in 3 places, inside nothing yet, but by sundown you hope it will hold something: leaf, stem, root, miracle. You are foraging. You don't call it that. You don't call it anything. You just move, through hedges, past fences, into woods where the wind sounds louder and the laws get quieter. You begin with what you know. Nettles grow by the ditch sharp, stubborn. You pluck them with a scrap of cloth, careful not to let them kiss your skin. Boiled long enough, they lose their sting. You've eaten them before. They taste like green and regret. Dandelions sprout in the cracked wall near the mill. Leaves like angry tongues. Bitter, but harmless. The roots too, if scrubbed and boiled to death. You take a few. Your fingers are already dark with dirt. You move to the hedgerow. You spot wild garlic flat green blades and a scent that feels like a memory of spring. A good sign. It means flavour, if not nutrition. You whisper thanks under your breath. Old habit. No one taught you. Just something you say when you find something that won't kill you. Because that's the line now. You're not looking for food. You're avoiding death. And death wears disguises. You kneel in a patch of what might be wild parsnip. Pale, knobby roots half hidden beneath the earth. They look familiar. Edible. Even. But your stomach clenches not with hunger, but with uncertainty. Because some roots lie. Hemlock water dropwort looks almost the same. Pale roots, feathered leaves. But one will feed your children. The other will kill them with a grin. A cruel, locked-jaw smile they call the sardonic grin. A face frozen in death that looks too much like laughter. You pull your hand back. You don't trust your memory today. You move on. There are mushrooms in the leaf litter. Plump. White domes. Clean. They catch the morning light and seem to glow. They beg to be picked. You hesitate. Because you've heard the stories. And you've seen what a single mistake looks like. A man who ate from the wrong patch. Who felt fine for a day. Maybe 2. And then the sickness came. The convulsions. The silence. Destroying angel, they call it. A name too beautiful for what it does. You walk past. The sack is still light. Your hands are shaking. Not from fear yet, but from the edge of collapse. Your belly presses into your spine. Your legs feel carved from soft wood. Every step is slower than the one before. Every decision is harder. You whisper to yourself now, this one looks right. This one smells wrong. This one might be worth it. You find chickweed, safe and bland. Wood sorrel, tangy, almost lemony. You chew a leaf to test it. It distracts your mouth from the emptiness. For a moment. And then you find it. A patch of unfamiliar greens. Broad leaves. Purple veins. It could be Orokia wild spinach. Or something else. You stare. You feel time slide sideways. In another world, you'd pick it. You'd be sure. You'd have books, names, warnings, a teacher. But in this world, you have hunger. And hunger is not patient. You take a few leaves. You will test them later. Boil. Taste. Wait. You've heard folk methods. Rub it on your skin. Watch for a rash. Touch it to your lip. Wait for tingling. Swallow a bit. Wait a day. But who has a day back at the house? You empty the sack onto the table. The children lean in. Their faces say everything. Wonder, hope, fear. They recognize the garlic, the nettles, the bitter roots. Then their eyes land on the mystery leaves. No one speaks. You set a pot to boil. The water bubbles faster than your courage. You sort the pile, rinse each leaf, tear away the bruised parts. You boil the greens until they lose their shape, their colour, their mystery, until everything becomes the same shade of murky. You taste it first, because that's the rule, because you are the one who brought it back, because your hands made the choice, because if there's a price, it should fall on you. The taste is odd, not bad, just off. You wait. 5 minutes. 10. Your stomach churns, but it always does now. Nothing new. Nothing terrifying. You serve the pot. Small bowls. Small portions. Steam curling up like ghostly fingers. Your daughter takes a bite and smiles. It's a small smile, weak, but real. You let yourself believe. Just for tonight. You might have fed them. Just for tonight. The pot held hope, not poison. But still, you lie awake later, listening to their breathing, one by one. You check on them, not to cover them, not to comfort them, but to be sure they're still breathing. Because that's how thin the line is now. Because you don't feed your family anymore. You gamble with them, and the pot is the dealer. You crouch low, almost kneeling, and lift the damp leaves with slow, careful fingers. There they are. Pale buttons in a nest of mulch. Clean, round, almost lovely. The colour of cream, the size of a coin. 5 of them, clustered like they grew knowing someone would be desperate enough to need them. Your stomach tightens, not from fear, but from want. Because these mushrooms could be a blessing. They could be food. They could be meat, in a world without meat. The texture, the weight, the faint scent that hints at something earthy and filling. You haven't seen real protein in weeks. You reach for them, and then you freeze. Because it's never just a mushroom. It's a question, a threat, a dare. This one might save you. This one might kill your child in her sleep. There is no difference in smell, no difference in colour. Not that your eyes would catch it. The deadly ones don't glow red or leak slime. They don't whisper curses. They look perfect. There's one, the destroying angel, that grows white and smooth, as innocent as a milk bun. If you eat it, you feel nothing. For a day, maybe 2. You might even feel better, stronger, and then it begins. The stomach cramps, the vomiting, the pain that folds you into yourself like paper. By the time you feel it, the damage is done. Your liver is melting, your kidneys shutting down, your blood turns slow, you die the way bread hardens quietly, from the inside out. No scream, just stillness. That's what makes mushrooms terrifying. You never see death coming. You look again at the patch. They sit in silence, waiting to be trusted. You remember the man from the next village over. He thought he knew the safe ones. He taught others, had a book. Even, one night, he brought home a basket full, fried them up in butter, shared them with his wife and their 2 sons. The next morning, the entire house was quiet. The neighbours smelled the burning pan before they smelled the bodies. You don't remember the funeral. You just remember the silence that followed. You try to recall the rules folk wisdom passed from mouths you no longer trust. If it bruises blue, leave it. If the gills are white, walk away. If it smells like almond, run. But rules fade when you're starving. Mushrooms don't care about rules. You pick one, gently, reverently. You turn it over in your hand. The gills are clean, the stalk thick. You snap it, listening for the texture. It breaks like cooked chicken, satisfying, real. You hold it to your nose. It smells like nothing. Earth, maybe. Humidity. Not poison, but not promise either. You take a bite, a small one. Just a flake of cap. Just enough to let your tongue speak. It tastes mild, neutral. You wait. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. You boil it. Long. You taste the broth. Still here. Still breathing. You chop the rest and feed it to the pot. You tell no one, because if it kills them, you did this. And if it saves them, no one needs to know the risk you took. The children eat first. They smile. One of them asks if there's more. You feel your throat close. Because what if they feel fine? What if tomorrow they smile again? For the last time, you sit through the night by the fire. The pot simmers quietly, as if amused. You watch your family sleep. You count their breaths. You touch their skin. Hours pass. Morning comes. They're still here. You weep silently, not from relief but from uncertainty. Because the game isn't over yet. Because some mushrooms wait 2 days, others wait 3. You've eaten a question, and now you must live with the answers slowly, hour by hour. You swear you won't do it again, but you will. You already know, because food has become Russian roulette, and hunger has made you the one spinning the cylinder. Every mushroom from now on is a choice between hunger and horror. You will pick again, taste again, risk again. Because that's what the pot demands. Because the pot doesn't care how the food got there, only that it does. There comes a point where you're no longer eating to survive. You're eating to pretend, to trick the body into silence, to give it shape, if not strength. What you chew no longer nourishes, it simply occupies. You feel it most in your belly, a slow churn, not pain, exactly, but a heaviness, like something real is happening in there, like your body might believe, for a moment, that something has been gained, but nothing has. These are not meals, these are delays. Today, you scrape bark from the tree behind the hut. It's old, cracked, blistered with lichen. You press your knife against the trunk and peel it slowly. Long ribbons of fibre, dry, brittle, and bitter in the nose. You remember hearing once that native tribe somewhere far across the sea ground bark into flower during hard winters. You're not sure it was this kind. You're not sure it matters. You shave it down, dry it by the fire, you crush it under a stone, it turns to powder. Sort of. You mix it with hot water, a handful of oat husks, a sprig of something green, it turns grey, it thickens, it smells like wet wood and desperation. You eat it slowly. Chewing bark takes time. That's one of its blessings. The act of eating becomes a ritual again. A long process, a distraction. You swallow. It sits heavy. It stays. Not long, but longer than air. That's enough. Tomorrow, you gather acorns. They fall like stones, small and brown and beautiful. The children collect them like treasure, their eyes lit not with joy, but with duty. You crack them open, one by one. The inside is firm, waxy, bitter. They can't be eaten raw, not unless you want your stomach to twist into knots. So you soak them in water, then more water, then again. You change it every few hours. It draws out the tannins, the poison hidden in the meat. It takes days, and even then, the taste remains, not sharp, but lingering, like regret in the corners of the mouth. You crush them with a stone, mix them with bark flour, fry them on a flat slate over fire. A cake forms, hard, brown, shiny at the edges. You feed it to your son. He chews, he swallows. He doesn't cry. You pretend that's victory. Later, he winces in his sleep. You know it's the acorns. You know they weren't ready, but you also know hell wake up. And that's more than you can say about everyone. The moss comes next. Soft. Green carpets on the north side of the trees. Wet to the touch. Smelling of old rain and cold stone. You boil it, not to make it safe, but to make it less alive. It doesn't dissolve. It softens. Like cloth. Like sponge. You press it into cakes. You chew them slowly. You pretend they're mushrooms. You don't swallow much. The texture turns your stomach. But again, chewing is enough. You don't always need food. Sometimes, you just need to simulate it. You move through these days in rhythm. Morning search, midday soak, evening boil, night chew. Your body becomes a system designed not to thrive, but to delay collapse. Even when you eat, your hands stay restless, as if they're already planning tomorrow's gathering, as if they know this isn't over, that nothing today will carry into the next. You start to dream of roots, bitter things, bulbs and tubers with names you can't pronounce. Your grandmother used to know which was safe. She's gone, and the knowledge went with her. Now, you taste first. Swallow little. Wait, hope. There's a root you found last week sweet at first, then strangely dry on the tongue. It numbed your lips. You spit it out. Your jaw ached for hours. You burned the rest in the fire. The smoke stung your eyes. You coughed blood that night, but you lived. That's the bar now. Not health, not strength, just breath. You notice changes in your body. Your skin is dull. Your hair comes out in clumps. Your fingernails bend before they break. Your blood, when it surfaces, is slow, dark. You have a rash on your back from the damp straw. It doesn't go away. You don't expect it to. The children grow quieter. The baby sleeps longer than he should. His limbs don't twitch the way they used to. You watch his chest rise and fall and count each movement like a prayer bead. You try not to think about the math of starvation. How many days the body can go without real fat, without salt, without iron. You count ribs, cheekbones, the soft fold at the base of your throat where fullness used to sit, and still you eat. Because empty feels worse, even if what you eat has no name. Even if what you eat doesn't give anything back. Even if what you eat might be killing you slower than the hunger would. You whisper to the pot as you stir. Just get us through. Not winter, not spring, not even the week. Just today. Just this next spoonful. Because even if the belly fills with bark and moss and phantom calories, what matters is that you're still upright, still moving, still pretending you are somehow still alive. The forest is not yours. It breathes beside your village like a beast in slumber green, vast and full of the food you're not allowed to touch. You can hear it at night, when the fire goes quiet and your belly turns on itself. You hear the low rustle of branches, the crackle of brush, sometimes a grunt, a paw, a squeal. Life is happening just beyond the fence line, and it is happening without you, because this is not your land. Not really. The Lord says it is. The forest law says it is. And the forest law is absolute. No hunting, no trapping, no snares, no gathering firewood, no cutting branches, no keeping dogs unless they've been mutilated 3 toes removed from the paw, so they can't chase a deer even if they try. If you're caught with meat in your home, they can blind you. If you're seen carrying a bow, even without an arrow, they can cut off your hand. If you kill a deer, they can hang you. And not just you, your son, your neighbour, anyone they suspect helped. The punishment is not just physical, it's symbolic, because the forest is not about food, it's about power. The deer don't belong to God or to nature, they belong to the Lord, to his hunt, to his spectacle. He rides out in bright silks, flanked by hornblowers and boys with spears, while you boil bark. He laughs as the hounds tear the throat from a stag, while your children suck moss for warmth. He hunts for pleasure. You starve for law. Sometimes you see them return from the wood's blood on their hands, meat wrapped in linen, wine on their lips. They hang the deer in open view, as if to say this is not for you, and it isn't. They don't even need all of it. Some of it rots. Some of it is thrown to dogs. You've seen birds picking at discarded ribs behind the manor, a fox trotting off with half a haunch. You would have eaten the marrow, the bone, the skin. You would have been grateful, but gratitude isn't part of the law, only obedience. So you do not enter the forest openly. You skirt its edge, gathering twigs that fall naturally, hoping no one sees. You dig roots in silence, ears alert for the sound of boots. You set your snares only at night, and only where the brush is thick enough to hide your sin. Even then there's risk. The Lord's warden doesn't wear armour. He doesn't need to. His power is not in weapons. It's in paperwork, in law, in precedent. If he says you've poached, then you've poached. You don't get to argue. You just get to bleed. There's a man in your village who walks with a limp. Once, he was strong, worked 2 strips of land, fed 4 mouths. One morning, he was caught with a rabbit. Just one. He said it was dead when he found it. No one believed him. It didn't matter. The axe came down just below the knee. Now he begs for bread with what's left of his hands. There's another woman older, with a blindfold over one eye. They say she boiled venison, and the smell reached the wrong window. No one saw her hunt, but she still pays. These stories are not unusual. They are instruction. The forest is not yours, not the deer, not the boar, not the pheasants that call to you in the morning like sirens from the leaves. You don't even own the squirrels. You teach your children not to point at them, not to follow them. You say the forest is dangerous not because of the wolves, but because of the men. Because when they catch you, they don't ask why, they ask who else. They want accomplices, names as confessions. They want you to fold in on yourself, and you do, because shame is easier to carry than a severed limb. You dream about the deer sometimes. Its body glistens in your sleep-thick muscle under smooth skin, warmth radiating off its chest. In the dream, it doesn't run. It walks toward you, lets you place a hand on its neck. You wake up tasting blood, your own, from where you've bitten your tongue. You've seen the tracks, fresh in the mud, delicate as pressed palms. You've seen fur caught in the brambles. You've heard the crack of hooves as they scatter, just yards away. They are everywhere, and still you may not eat. Your son once asked why the forest doesn't belong to everyone. You didn't answer. What would you say? Because some men like to see other men obey, because ownership is the privilege of those who don't need. You told him to hush, told him to count the firewood, told him that asking is almost as dangerous as taking. But inside, you screamed, because you know that if the law were fair, you would already be full. You know that meat hangs in the trees like fruit, but the tree is cursed, and the fruit forbidden. You know that your empty pot isn't a failure of nature, it's a symptom of hierarchy. The forest is not dangerous because it's wild, it's dangerous because it's guarded. You set the snare at dawn, not quite night, not quite morning, the hour when the village is still and even the crows haven't started screaming. Your fingers are cold, your hands shake, not from fear, not yet, but from hunger measured in weeks, not days. You've done this before, but it never gets easier. The cord is thin, twisted from gut and hope. You loop it into a circle, just wide enough. You bend a sapling, tuck it under tension, and place the trigger stick so delicately it feels like handling glass. The trail is fresh small paw prints in the dirt, soft droppings. You brush the ground smooth again to hide your work. And then you leave. You do not look back. You never look back. The day passes in silence. You pretend to fix tools, to sweep the threshold, to sleep. Your eyes drift to the woods again and again, not because you're impatient, but because you're already guilty. Because if the snare has caught something, you are already a criminal. Because if it has, you will try again. You wait. Evening falls, and just before dark, you slip away. No one sees you leave. That's the goal. You move fast, but not too fast. You breathe steady. You keep your head down. Every leaf is a witness. Every branch whispers, not yours. You reach the spot. The snare is sprung. Your chest tightens. The sapling quivers slightly, bent back, released. The trigger stick is gone. The loop tightens around a shape. Soft. Still. A rabbit. Its fur is damp with dew. Its eyes open but not seeing. Its neck bent at an angle too clean to be kind. You feel both triumph and terror. You made this happen, and now you must survive it. You don't celebrate. You don't breathe. You act. You slip it into the lining of your tunic, high against your ribs, close to the skin. Its warmth seeps into you not as heat, but as fear. You reset the snare. Always reset the snare. Then you turn for home. The walk back is the longest of your life. Every step is a question. Did anyone see you? Is someone following? Does the weight under your tunic look unnatural? You hear a twig snap and flinch. A dog barks in the distance. You press your hand to your side, feeling the outline of ears, fur, legs tucked in tight. You rehearse your lie. Him gathering firewood, him checking a fence. I saw something move, went to look. I've done nothing. The rabbit twitches once. Reflex. Nerve. You stop walking. You freeze. Then you start again. In the village, everything feels louder. The creak of a gate, the slam of a door, the scrape of a pot against stone. Any of it could mean attention, could mean questions. You slide into your hut and close the door with your back. Only then do you breathe. But not deeply, because the danger isn't over. It's only changing shape. Now, it's about concealment. You skin the rabbit quickly, hands shaking, blade dull. You nick the hide once, blood pools, but you've seen worse. You bury the fur in the ash pit behind the hut. You'll burn it later. The meat is small, more bone than muscle, but it smells like life. You chop it fine. So fine it barely looks like animal anymore. You stir it into the pot already boiling onions, herbs, a scrap of barley. No one asks where the meat came from. They wouldn't. They understand what it means to not ask. Dinner is quiet. Your children eat slowly, eyes wide. Your husband doesn't speak, but his shoulders relax. Your mother hums softly after the second bowl. The baby smiles with a mouthful of broth. You chew each bite like it's a memory you're afraid to lose. And still your heart races because you can't enjoy this. Because someone might smell the stew. Because the smoke might curl the wrong direction. Because the meat might speak in its own way. You clean everything. Twice. You bury the bones deep. The blood you rinse with boiling water, then sand, then spit. But you still feel watched. For days you jump at noises. A knock at the door. A shout down the path. A stranger asking about traps. Every voice is accusation. Every glance is a rope. And every time someone mentions the Lord's Warden, your blood runs cold. Because if he knew, he doesn't need proof. He just needs permission. They say he caught a man last year with squirrel bones in his fire pit. The man said they were his wife's. The warden said that was interesting because his wife had also disappeared. No one's seen either of them since. So you keep your head down, you set no more snares for a while. You feed your family grain, moss, bark. But they remember that night. They remember the stew. They remember the feeling of being fed, and so do you, which is why. Next week, when you see the tracks again, when the sapling is still strong, when the cord is coiled just right, you will go back, because that rabbit didn't just feed you, it changed you. It reminded you that meat exists, that survival is not a theory, that life, in its most urgent form, is a single trembling paw in your tunic, and that hunger has made you a thief, a liar, a mother, a killer, a believer in what must be done. Because in this world, food is not earned, it is taken, and every bite comes with a cost. The meat is gone now, boiled into softness, torn into strands so fine they vanished into the soup. No bone, no skin, no evidence, only warmth, only flavour, only memory. You ladled it carefully, spoonfuls that looked like nothing. Just pottage, brown, thick, same as always, but richer, fuller. The kind of fullness that coats the tongue before you even swallow. You said nothing. No one asked, but they knew. The pot steamed with a silence that felt heavier than usual. The children sat straighter. The old woman stirred twice before taking a bite. Your husband closed his eyes after the first spoon. No prayers were spoken, but it felt like grace. The meat changed everything. It wasn't the quantity, there wasn't much. A single rabbit doesn't feed a household. But the taste lingered. The oil clung to lips, softening the crust of bread. The broth shimmered. The texture thickened. It tasted like life, and that made it feel like a sin. You ate slowly, reverently. Every bite a question, every swallow a confession. The pot had become something holy, not just warm, but sacred. Not just sustenance, but forgiveness. You watched your daughter lick her fingers and smile. Her cheeks were pink for the first time in weeks. Your son asked for seconds. You gave him your share. You weren't hungry anymore, and not in the stomach, in your chest. Something tight unwound. The kind of release that feels like grief, because you had fed them. Truly. Finally. But not without cost. Every spoonful was risk. The rabbit wasn't just meat, it was proof. Of disobedience. Of trespass. Of quiet rebellion curled inside a bowl. You knew what you had done. And yet the moment felt clean. Almost divine. The house was warm that night. The fire gentler. The silence soft. Not the silence of dread, but of digestion. Of slow fullness. Your husband reached for your hand under the table. You let him. For a moment, you felt like a woman, not a criminal. Like a mother, not a thief. Like a priest, breaking bread. The next morning, the pot was scraped clean. No one mentioned it, but no one forgot. Because that meal changed something you didn't know was changeable. Hope had a texture again. Oil, salt, muscle. The baby slept through the night, belly round, hands open. The children played in the yard, weak but laughing. The old woman hummed something like a song. You swept the floor twice. You washed the bowls in hot water, slowly, gently, as if washing away blood, because the act had been pure, but the source was not. You buried the bones behind the hut, deep under the cold earth. You said nothing, but you whispered thanks anyway, to the rabbit, to the trap, to whatever God watches over those who must break rules to keep their children alive. Later, your husband said, quietly, it was good. You nodded. Then he said, we'll need to find another. You said nothing. but you already knew, because one taste is enough to remind the body what it needs, and one smile from your child is enough to break every law twice. You aren't proud, but you aren't sorry either. You know now what it takes. You know now what it means to feed them, not just to delay death, but to push it back, to draw a line in the dirt and say, not tonight, not this child, not this family, not yet. You close the cupboard and sit by the fire. You touch your lips. They still taste like meat, and you know, without needing to speak it aloud, you will do it again. Because this was not just a meal, it was communion, a moment where the body and the crime became one, and it felt holy. You wait until nightfall, not just evening, night, deep and quiet, when the chickens stop shifting in their sleep and even the wind seems hesitant to move. That's when you do it. The fire is low, not dead never dead, but small, flickering, soft enough to trust. You crouch beside it with the parcel wrapped in old linen. It's damp, it smells like iron and fur. You unwrap it with hands that shake more from fatigue than fear. Inside is the rabbit skin. You meant to burn it soonest, as you told yourself you would, but there was always someone in the room, always a door half open, always a question not yet asked. So you waited, and now it's time. You feed it slowly to the flame, piece by piece, not all at once. That would smoke too much. It curls quickly, blackening at the edges, folding in on itself like scorched parchment. The fur hisses as it burns. The stench of singed hair fills your nose. You try not to cough. No one must wake. You hold the final scrap over the coals, gripping it with 2 fingers until it begins to tremble, and then fall. Ash rises, a grey whisper. You stir it into the coals, as though trying to erase a word mid-sentence. But fire remembers, and so do you. The bones were buried already behind the latrine, deep beneath the roots where even dogs don't sniff. You crushed them first, under stone, until they cracked like twigs. Then you covered the hole with ash, leaves, a broken pot shard for good luck. No one saw you, you're sure, but the guilt still clings. So now, you turn to the pot. The inside is stained darker than usual, richer. The meat left behind more than just taste, it left memory. You fill it with water and scrub hard. The wooden spoon thuds dully against the iron. You scrape the bottom until your knuckles sting, until the soot floats up and blackens the water. You pour it outside, then rinse again, and again. The next boil must look poor, empty, safe. The smell must return to neutral. The pot must forget. You wipe the rim with cloth until the grain catches. You run your fingers inside to feel for anything slick, anything suspicious. You find nothing, but still, you scrub again. Because someone might check. Because someone might smell it on you. You scrub your hands, your fingernails. You rinse your mouth with water so bitter it makes your teeth ache. You shake out your hair, and still, you wonder. Do I smell like guilt? You clean the knife too. The same blade that mends rope and trims candles, now sanctified by meat. You sharpen it, just in case. Then dull it again. Nothing must change. Nothing must draw attention. Routine is protection. You stare at the fire, it stares back. You wonder what it would say, if it could speak. Would it tell the Lord's man what you burned? Would it describe the way the skin curled? The way the hair danced? Would it remember the fat that spit when you dropped the meat into the pot? You bury your thoughts in silence. Because you can't afford to imagine being caught. You can't afford imagination at all. You fold the cloth the rabbit was wrapped in 3 times, and feed it to the flame as well. Cloth smokes more than skin. You open the shutter briefly to let it out. Cold air rushes in, smoke flows out. You close it quickly, no one stirs. You sit back on your heels, sweat cooling down your spine. The fire crackles once louder than it should, and you flinch. You glance around the room. Your husband's breathing is even. The children snore softly, curled like question marks under their blankets. The old woman sighs. You exhale slowly, quietly. There's still one thing left. You crawl to the garden. It's late. The soil is cold. The stars blink like indifferent witnesses. You dig with your hands, not deep just enough. You empty the bucket of wash water into the earth. Water from the pot, from the stew, from the crime. You stir the soil over it with your fingers until it looks undisturbed, until it smells like nothing. You walk back barefoot, your toes numb, inside. The fire waits, smaller now, quieter, but still awake. You feed it one stick, just enough to stay alive through morning. Then you sit before it, cross-legged, hands raw, eyes stinging. You say nothing, but you think it. Forget. Forget what you tasted. Forget what you burned. Forget what I asked of you. Let the smoke drift. Let the ash settle. Let the scent die before it spreads. The fire pops once, not angry, just tired. You are too. You curl up by the hearth and pull your shawl close. You let your cheek press into the floor. The warmth against your side is gentle. And for now, that's enough. You close your eyes. You breathe through your mouth. You imagine the fire swallowing your secrets, one by one, until even you can't taste them anymore. It begins with a tongue too thick. You wake before the light, mouth open, lips cracked. You run your tongue across the roof of your mouth and feel grit, like you slept with ashes between your teeth. You try to swallow, but your throat has turned to linen. You cough. Nothing comes out. You're thirsty. Not politely, not as a suggestion. This is thirst as demand. Your body has made its request. It will not be denied. You rise slowly, bones groaning under skin too thin. The bucket by the door is empty. Of course it is. You tip it anyway. Hope can be stubborn. The well is too far for this hour. And anyway, the rope snapped last week. No one's fixed it. The men said they would. They haven't. So you walk to the stream. Your legs ache, your knees crack, but the thirst presses you forward. It buzzes in your skull, makes your vision blurry. The sun hasn't risen yet. The world is dull, grey and cruel. The stream is just beyond the edge of the trees. It murmurs softly in the dark, trickling, calling, but it's not a kind sound. You've known this water your whole life. You've watched children splash in it, women wash clothes in it, men rinse blood from knives and pigs. It's where the tanner dumps his lye, the butcher his offal. It winds its way past every cesspit, every backyard latrine. There are no barriers, no filters. This water is not clean. You know what lives in it. Animal waste, human waste, rotting things. Algae thick enough to grip your ankles. Froth that forms even on cold days. Still, you kneel at its edge. Your reflection startles you. Hollow cheeks, eyes sunken, lips pale. You look like someone who's already died once. The thirst claws again. You cup your hands. The water smells faintly of metal and something worse, something alive and wrong. But your throat is closing. You raise your hands, and you drink. It hits your stomach like a question. It doesn't soothe. It spreads slowly like cold oil. You hold it in, waiting, listening to your own gut. Nothing. Not yet. So you drink more. 3 gulps. 4. Enough to feel full. Enough to feel hope. You walk back slower. The thirst has been replaced, but not by comfort. Just silence. That silence does not last. By midday, your stomach begins to ache. A low, writhing pain, like something is turning over, looking for a way out. You bend double in the garden, gripping your knees. You pray it passes. It doesn't. The first wave hits before sunset. Sweat on your forehead. A cramp that feels like a blade behind your ribs. You make it to the corner of the hut just in time. It doesn't stop. The water leaves you violently, over and over. Your knees go weak. Your breath shortens. You're no longer thirsty. You're terrified, because you know this pattern. You've seen it before, in neighbours, in children. In the priest who visited last spring and never made it home. It starts with cramps, then fever, then the body empties itself water, salt, life. You press your forehead to the dirt. The world tilts. The pot over the fire bubbles softly, mocking you. You crawl to it. You ladle out broth barely warm, barely food. You sip, you shake, you spill. Your fingers tremble. You curse the stream. You curse your body. You curse the thirst that led you there. But you would do it again, because the alternative was worse. That's the truth no one says aloud. We drink poison because we have nothing else. Because thirst doesn't care about bacteria or parasites or feces floating just out of sight. It only wants to be quenched. You lie down, curled on your side, a blanket tucked around your shoulders that doesn't warm you. Your skin is damp, not with sweat, with something colder. You hear the fire. You hear your children breathing. You hear your own pulse like footsteps down a long hall. You think of the stream again, of the way it moved past your hands, of the shimmer of light across its surface, of how beautiful it looked in the dark, like a lie told kindly, like a knife with a ribbon tied around it. You're not sure what time it is when the fever breaks. It could be midnight. It could be tomorrow. You wake up in sweat and steam and the sound of your own breath, shallow but still present. You're still here. For now. The thirst has retreated, but only for today. It will return. It always does. And when it does, the stream will still be there, waiting, just past the trees, whispering promises. You know better. You've known better your whole life. But your lips still touch the water, because thirst doesn't care what you know. It doesn't care about pathogens or risk. It doesn't ask about source, or clarity, or temperature. It doesn't wait for boiled water to cool, or for the well to be fixed, or for your strength to return. It only whispers one thing. Now. So you kneel by the river again, not because you're brave, because you're tired, and that changes everything. You try not to look at the surface too closely. There's a film today thin, oily, the yellow scum pressed against the banks like bruised silk. Somewhere upstream, someone slaughtered a goat. You can smell it faintly. Blood and iron, offal, and worse. You close your eyes, you drink anyway, you swallow, and you feel the chill not just of temperature, but of consequence. Because this is a gamble. Every mouthful is a loaded chamber. Every swallow is a pulled trigger. You've heard the names whispered by healers and gravekeepers. E. coli, cholera, typhoid. Words that sound too big for your world, too foreign, but you know their shape in the body. You know the fever, the sweat, the way the eyes sink and stop blinking. You've buried people who drank from the same place you just did. You're not being careless. You're being human. You don't boil the water anymore. The wood is too scarce, the fire too weak. You tell yourself it's fine, that the running stream clears itself, that you drank yesterday and survived, but you know the truth. The truth is that you've given up. Not all the way, but enough. Enough to stop straining cloth. Enough to stop boiling. Enough to stop caring whether the water is clean or simply cold enough to feel real. That's what you crave now. Temperature, weight, wetness, not safety. You drink again, this time slower. The water tastes like metal and like riverbed, like every mistake that's ever washed downstream. You sit by the edge and let it rest in your belly. You wait for the signal, but nothing comes, and that's how it starts. The danger isn't immediate. That's what makes it cruel. Sometimes, death waits 3 days. You'll feel fine, stronger, even. You'll lift your child, smile, think I've won, and then the ache begins. A tightness in your gut, a twisting, a cramp like a fist inside your ribs. Then the heat rises, then the cold returns, then the body begins to betray itself in a dozen humiliating ways. And you'll remember that sip. You'll replay it in your head, like a prayer gone wrong. But by then, it's too late, because the enemy has already moved in. It's growing, multiplying, blooming in your blood, and there's nothing you can do. No medicine, no doctor, no second chance, just time, and maybe not much of it. You stare at the stream. It doesn't care. It rolls on, gentle, even beautiful. A silver ribbon across the mud, catching sunlight like a lie. It gave you what you needed. It might take what it wants. You walk back slowly. Every step presses the water deeper into your body. You feel it shift, not with malice, but with possibility. You lie down beside the fire. You close your eyes. You listen to the sounds of the house, your child breathing, the pot simmering, the dog scratching at the door, and beneath all of it, the water moving inside you, waiting. You don't know if this was your last clean sip or your first fatal one. You only know this. You are always thirsty, and the river is always watching. At first, you think they're sleeping. The morning is unusually still, no thud of bare feet on packed earth, no muffled giggles beneath the blanket, no rustling, no fighting over the last crust of bread. just silence. You stir the pot, slowly, even though it's nearly empty, even though there's nothing new to feed them. You make the sound on purpose, the clink of the spoon, the scrape against iron, something to wake them. Nothing moves. You glance over your shoulder. They're lying where they always lie, curled together, arms and legs tangled, but there's something wrong with the shapes. They are too still, too flat, too quiet. You move closer. Your daughter opens her eyes, barely. Her gaze doesn't meet yours. It passes through you, like wind through an open door. You touch her forehead. It's not warm, not cold, just empty. Her skin is thin as dried paper. Her cheeks have vanished. Her belly swells unnaturally, a drum beneath skin stretched too tight. She doesn't speak. She hasn't spoken in 2 days. You press your ear to her chest, still there. Barely. A small, stubborn beat. But it's the quiet that undoes you. Not the illness, not the hunger, the silence. Your son shifts beside her, making a sound like a sigh. He doesn't open his eyes. His legs are too thin, knees like hinges. He twitches once and then lies still again. You realize you've stopped breathing because you're listening too hard. Listening for something that might not be there tomorrow. You cross the room to the corner where your mother lies. The old woman. She hasn't risen in 3 mornings. Her breath is soft, inconsistent. You hold your hand to her nose to be sure. It fogs your palm once, then nothing, then once more. You sit down beside the fire and rest your head in your hands. This is what the end looks like. Not screaming, not wailing, just stillness. You remember when the house was noisy, laughter, crying, arguing, children stomping, the baby fussing, the fire crackling, the dog barking at shadows. Now, the loudest sound is your own heartbeat, and that too is slowing. You ladle out a bowl of soup. It's barely coloured. Just warm water with a floating sliver of cabbage. You touch the edge of the bowl to your daughter's lips. She turns away. You don't push. You sip it yourself. It tastes like failure. You wrap her tighter in the blanket. You rub her feet. You whisper her name. No response. The baby hasn't cried all day. You think of the neighbours. You haven't heard their children either. You realise the whole village is quiet now. Too quiet. It's as if hunger itself has spread like fog thickening the air. Muffling sound. Stealing noise as well as strength. You walk outside. The sky is pale. Empty. The trees don't move. No dogs. No carts. No shouting. Just wind. And even that feels tired. You sit on the step. You rest your elbows on your knees and bury your face in your hands. Your stomach aches, but not from emptiness. From guilt. You had meat once. Not long ago. You fed them. You saved them. For a day. 2. Maybe. And now your daughter doesn't even look at you. Now your son sleeps like a shadow. Now your mother breathes only when she remembers to. You go back inside. You light the fire, though there's no food to cook, just to make heat, just to keep moving. You place a damp cloth on your daughter's head. You hum a lullaby you don't remember learning. The sound startles you. It's the first noise you've made in hours. You whisper again. Not to her, not to the room, to whatever hears people in moments like this. You don't beg. You've passed that. You just ask, please. Let her open her eyes. Please. Let her smile. Please. Let her say something. Anything. But the silence answers you back. Because that's the truth of it. Death doesn't arrive with a scream. It arrives when the sound leaves, when the bowl stays full, when the blanket stays flat, when the morning comes and no one rises, when the pot still simmers but no one lifts the spoon. You sit beside your daughter. You place your hand on her chest. You count. You wait. You listen. You stay by your daughter's side long after the fire has died. Her skin is dry now, not warm, not clammy, just still. You pull the blanket higher, tuck it in at the neck, pretend it matters. You listen, not just for her, for something, a shift in breath, a cough, a cry, even the sound of wind through the shutters. But the world holds its breath with you. Your own chest rises and falls like a reluctant tide. You think, this is what the last hour sounds like wool stuffed in your ears. like your life's noise leaving. You look over at your son. He's curled in on himself like a comma, back arched, arms crossed over his belly. His knees twitch faintly. His mouth is open, dry, cracked at the corners. You used to scold him for sleeping with his mouth open. Now, you watch it closely counting the breaths, waiting for movement. The baby lies in a basket lined with old cloth. He hasn't made a sound in 2 days. When you lift him, he does not cry. He only blinks once, slowly, as if even that takes more than he has left. You press your ear to his chest. Yes, still there, but slow, so slow. You lay him back down and feel your legs give out beneath you. You sit on the floor, cold seeping into your bones. You let it. Because what's the point of fighting cold when the hunger inside you burns hotter? You remember a story your mother told you when you were a child, a myth, that when a child dies of hunger, their soul lingers in the house for 3 days, sitting quietly, watching, waiting to see if anyone notices, and if no one cries, the soul leaves bitter, hollow, wandering. You didn't believe it then. Now, you don't not believe it. You look up and imagine them to be ghosts, with wide eyes and small hands, perched in corners like birds, watching their own bodies slowly fade. You wonder if your daughter would stay. She's always been quiet, obedient, the kind who waits for permission before speaking, before standing, before reaching out. You wonder if she would wait to be missed. The fire has died down again. You let it. Smoke no longer bothers you. Cold no longer bothers you. Noise no longer bothers you. It's the absence that hurts now. The house feels too big, too hollow. You want someone to scream, even in pain. You want someone to slam a bowl down, throw something, shout at the sky. But there's no strength for that here. Only stillness, only breath, and the long waits between. You reach for your daughter's hand. It fits in yours easily now. She used to have plump fingers, always warm, always moving, tracing patterns in the dust, tugging your sleeve, waving at shadows. Now her hand is limp. You lift it. She doesn't wake. You kiss her knuckles. Nothing. You rest her hand gently on her chest and sit beside her. You hum again. The same lullaby as before. Slower now. It's more for you than for her. Your voice is hoarse. You hum off key. The words don't matter. The sound does. A tiny rebellion against the quiet. But even the tune fades. Your throat aches. Your chest feels too heavy. You let the silence return, because that's what this house is now. Not a home. A waiting room. And you are the one holding the door. This was never about food. Not really. You didn't eat to grow. You didn't eat to enjoy. You didn't eat to live well. You ate to delay death, to outlast it. Every bite, every sip, every spoonful of brown-grey broth was a contract with time. 1 more hour, 1 more day, 1 more season of mud and breath and silence. You never really lived in this world. You drifted through it on an empty stomach. No one remembers what hunger does to the mind. They talk about it like a number, a statistic, a famine year, a poor harvest. But you know what it really is. It's forgetting how full ever felt. It's learning to walk slower because you're lighter than your bones. It's dreaming of bread not because you miss the taste, but because it's chewable, because it's solid. You learn to love food that hurt you, bread that scraped your throat, soup that burned your tongue because your body stopped warning you it was too hot, roots that gave you rashes, mushrooms that might have killed you, acorns that dried out your lips for 3 days. Still, you ate them. Because the real terror wasn't pain. It was emptiness. There is no poetry in starving. There is no dignity, no redemptive arc. Only a series of increasingly desperate decisions performed in smaller and smaller spaces, until you become no more than a body that functions out of habit. You didn't live your life. You digested it. 1 meal at a time. You remember the pot. Always simmering, always the same. You fed it scraps. It fed you echoes. There was something sacred in that repetition. Not holy, just constant. You could trust it to give you something, even when that something felt like chewing on failure. It never judged you. It never praised you. It just waited. Even now, when it's empty, when the walls are still, when the fire is no more than a smear of red in the ash. The pot holds your story, not in what it contained, but in what it didn't. Your children lie curled on the floor, their stomachs silent. You used to listen for the growls, now you dread the stillness. A growling stomach meant someone was alive enough to feel it. Silence means the body has adjusted, means something inside has shut down. You hear your son mumble in sleep, a name, maybe, a memory, then quiet again. You look at your hands. They're thin, veins sharp under skin, burn marks along the wrist from where the pot bit back, but they still move. They still remember the motions of making food, even if there is none. You tie a cloth. You wipe the bowls. You press your thumb against a knot in the table. Because this is how hunger wins, not in screams, but in rhythm, in the quiet rituals of surrender. You remember when the forest looked green. Now it looks like failure. So much life. So little allowed. You remember when bread was hard. Now you would break your teeth for it again. You remember when silence meant peace. Now it means something has already slipped away. You've become something else. Not a woman, not a wife, not a mother, not even a victim. Just an instrument in someone else's machine. Because that's what hunger does in a world like this. It doesn't just weaken you. It uses you. It keeps you obedient, compliant, careful. It teaches you how not to ask questions, how not to take risks, how to survive on less, how to say thank you when you're offered punishment disguised as bread. You don't eat to nourish yourself. You eat to stay standing long enough to sow grain, so you can make more bread, so you can eat again, so you can wake and repeat and repeat. You eat to be useful, to work the land, to earn your keep, to deserve your rations, but deep down you know the truth. You're not eating to survive. You're surviving to eat. It's a cycle that pretends to be holy, but it's a cage, and every bite is a lock turning in the dark. You think about the nobility. They're bread, white, soft, sifted 7 times until even the memory of roughness is gone. Their meat, piled high, not earned, not hunted, not needed. Their wine, their cakes, their imported spice. You think about the bones you buried behind the hut, the rabbit you hid, the laws you broke just to give your child the feeling of being full, and how guilty you felt after, as if nourishing your family had made you a criminal, as if feeding a child was a rebellion. It was, it still is, because food, in this world, was never about feeding. It was about control. You think about all the words they used: tithe, ration, fealty, rent. What they meant was, you may live, but only if you stay hungry. The hunger kept you compliant, made you careful, made you tired enough not to revolt, because revolution requires strength, and strength requires calories, and calories require permission. So they built a system around your stomach and called it civilization. You eat their bread, and they eat your labor. You eat their pottage, and they eat your years. You chew slowly, and they grow fat. And still, you thank them. Because the fear of an empty bowl is stronger than the fury in your chest. So you keep going, because there's no choice. But one day, maybe you'll find a crust beneath your nail, a sprout in the ditch, a spark in your child's eyes, and you'll remember you were never fed. You were managed. You were never full. You were filled just enough to keep quiet. And your belly. Your belly wasn't empty because of nature. It was empty because someone needed it to be. Because an empty belly is obedient. But you're not obedient now. You're awake. And in that final clarity, as you watch your family sleep, the fire burn out, and your body grow cold, you realize something that feels truer than any prayer you've ever whispered. You ate their bread, but what they've been feeding on was you.